Let's imagine you're about to hold a meeting to make an important decision. And you are in a hurry. Is it better to hold the meeting standing up or sitting down? Researchers from University of Missouri asked groups of people to imagine that they'd crashed on the moon, and then only a few pieces of equipment had survived the crash. The groups were asked to identify which bits of equipment were most important, and their decisions were compared to the correct answers supplied by NASA. Some of groups held their meetings standing up, and the others held them sitting down. So, why do humans feel awkwardness? According to Tai Toshiro, author of the appropriately titled book Awkward, this is part of human evolution. In hunter-gatherer times, sticking with social norms, like saying thank you when someone gives you something, or waiting your turn for food, was a way to keep tight-knit groups together and keep out anyone who might be a threat. Today, we're still sensitive to tiny, even silly social customs, like responding to "how are you" with "fine" as a sign of mutual respect.
Popular ride-sharing firm Uber has had its license to operate in London revoked in a surprise move by the city's regulator. There were multiple reasons for the decision. TfL cited the company's approach to reporting criminal offences. In August, a senior officer within London's Metropolitan Police Service wrote to TfL about Uber's slowness to report a passenger's accusation that her driver had sexually assaulted her. TfL said it was also concerned about how Uber obtained medical certificates and criminal records checks for drivers. The straw that broke the camel's back may have been the company's Greyball software, an internal application that Uber may have used to block regulators' oversight of the Uber app.
Take eye contact, for example. Studies say the right amount of eye contact during conversations is about 3.3 seconds. But awkward people don't instinctively do that. But when we don't look people in the eyes, it makes them feel socially ostracized. According to Toshiro's work, awkward people tend to look at other parts of the face, like the chin or the ear, more than the eyes. Therefore, they might end up alienating the person they're talking to, and missing out on important information about how that person might be feeling. The good news is that if your brain isn't great at social cues, it might be good at other stuff instead. When the Second World War came to an end, the British took some German civilians around the Belsen concentration camp. But why they do this? To show them what their own soldiers had done during the war. It was reported that one of the civilians had said, "What terrible criminals these prisoners must have been to receive such treatment," not uttered by a guard, but by a civilian. The just world hypothesis is a cognitive bias in which we as human beings try to make sense of a world that is unfortunately unjust. Human beings in the West Savannah need each other in order to survive. In today's modern society, people need protection from other people too. was the first to acknowledge that. So if we agree that this is one of the first fundamental functions of society, we should in fact reject any human behavior that goes against this theory. So it's true Beethoven was a rude and vulgar person, who probably suffered from the bipolar disorder Van Gogh. Nevertheless, as long as they don't cross over the line and breach the basic human contract, we may savor and rejoice the art and creations. This is why I am able to enjoy Beethoven's magnificent creations. Yet on the other hand, as a daughter of Holocaust survivor, I am unable to listen to the music, magnificent as it may be, of composers who believe, for example, in the final solutions of the Jews. An artist that breaches this contract, that endangers the freedom and safety of member of society, regardless of the religion, fate, beliefs, or background, by a direct action, and this is very important. The main problem we have isn't an issue of actually doing the work, it's just starting. Starting is the hardest part. So how do we make it easier? Take your large task and break it into something small. Once you think you've made it small, make it even smaller than that. Do the same with your time commitment. It's great that you blocked out the next 3 hours to do work, but guess what? Studying for 3 hours is incredibly daunting. You do not want to do that. You want to watch Med School Insider's YouTube videos instead. Here's how you get past that: you're not studying for 3 hours anymore. Instead, you're studying for only 25 minutes, which is a lot easier than 3 hours. When Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, he surely didn't anticipate that children would end up becoming some of its main users. Most start using the internet at the average age of 3, and as recent research shows, children now spend more time playing and socializing online than watching television programs. Given this change in habits, it is not surprising that a recent House of Lords report has raised online safety and behavior as an important issue. The report said that for children, learning to survive in a world dominated by the internet should be as important as reading and writing. The House of Lords Communications Committee also warned that children should not be leaving school without a well-rounded understanding of the digital world. It also suggested that the government should think about implementing new legal requirements and a code of conduct companies would have to adhere to, which would help to bring the internet up to child-friendly standards. Of course, trying to rectify this lack of child-centered design is not an easy task, but one that requires the cooperation and goodwill of many sectors. It will need to involve consultation with technology, education, legal, and policy experts. And it would also be a good idea to make children and young people part of the process. The idea behind recycling is simple: by breaking old products down and converting them into something usable again, we conserve natural resources. It saves forests, cuts emissions, and means less pollution. Sadly, it's not that simple. Recycling is deeply entwined with our economic system, and right now doesn't make much economic sense. It often costs more to recycle than it does to just throw things away, which is bad news for the environment. So is it worth paying for? Recycling saves serious amounts of energy, which in turn means lower greenhouse gas emissions. Making cans from recycled aluminium uses 95% less energy than mining and using raw materials. Recycling steel saves 60%, as does recycling paper, so it boils down to how quickly we're able to remake the way we make things. As of 2018, we were tracked to generate waste at more than double the rate of population growth through 2050, so we can expect plenty more rubbish to pile up. Some communities are running out of room to store all their trash and have stopped collecting plastic, paper, and glass. Fish are important because they help maintain the health of marine ecosystems and provide support to other marine life. They are an important part of the food web because they are predators to smaller organisms and prey to marine mammals and seabirds globally. They also support humans. About 80 million tons of fish are harvested annually. This volume is enough to feed all Filipinos with their annual fish consumption for 20 years. And there are currently about 60 million people working in the fishing industry globally. But on a global scale, 33% of fisheries are overfished, meaning too many fish are being harvested. This may cause fish populations to become depleted and not able to recover. 67% are fully exploited, meaning additional fishing effort could lead to the fisheries collapse. Only 10% have room to grow, with just 10% of the fisheries having a room to grow. We might experience a global fishing crisis. David Olivia Garcia is a co-host of New Mexico in Focus and is also the managing editor for the New Mexico Independent, which is an online news site. He says that the internet has some great benefits for journalism. The internet is this new, amazing medium. Not so new, it's been around quite some time now. But it's maturing as, among other things, a place for journalism. In a sense, the internet allows you to tell stories better than in a newspaper or on television. For this reason, you can do it all online. You can have the written word, you can have still photographs, you can have video. You can link and kind of connect to the other journalism that has been done on a given topic. So it's not like you're in a vacuum. The internet has had a negative impact on these papers. However, John Fleck, who is a columnist for the Albuquerque Journal and also has his own blog, says that he doesn't think that's entirely the case. It really makes me more efficient as a journalist in terms of information gathering, confirmation, helping me get the background necessary to write a story. So it's really good for that. I am going to talk today mostly about what I do as a curator here at the National Museum of Australia, but I want to draw some generalities from that in terms of a series of curatorial practices, tools, techniques, and methods that I think could be of interest to your students and to you in developing extension history courses. I want to talk about what I do as a curator and then, from that, also talk a bit about the kinds of history that I think museums are particularly good at creating and communicating. I think this is something I would really like to discuss because it is not necessarily very well understood, is that I think museums, as Dave insisted by putting up my quote in his slide, create a very particular kind of history. It's not the kind of history that gets created in books or in dating films or in compositions. It's a very particular kind of history that grows out of the fact that museums are centrally interested and defined by their collections. I should say that is not an uncontested view of museums, but it is certainly my view of museums. Curators try to understand material culture as evidence of other people's lives, as a means to try to understand other people, what they look like, what they did, how they made a living, what they hoped for in their lives, how they tried to construct their world, and why they made particular choices. One way in which curators differ from other historians is therefore in terms of how we interrogate the past, what elements we use to communicate the past.